My mother-in-law pretended to love me for years while secretly poisoning my marriage, so I exposed her at her own birthday party. The woman who hugged me every Sunday dinner had been systematically destroying my marriage for 3 years. I discovered this on a Tuesday morning when I accidentally grabbed her phone instead of mine from the kitchen counter. The lock screen showed a message preview that made my blood freeze in my veins. She had been texting my husband's ex-girlfriend, sharing intimate details about our fights and encouraging her to reach out to him. When I married into this family, I thought I had won the lottery with in-laws. She baked me cookies every week, remembered my favorite coffee order, and even helped me pick out furniture for our first apartment. The whole family seemed to embrace me with open arms, making me feel like I finally belonged somewhere after growing up in foster care. But that Tuesday morning changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I scrolled through months of messages between her and the ex-girlfriend, my hands shaking as I read conversation after conversation. She had been feeding information about our relationship troubles, our financial struggles, even our attempts to get pregnant. The ex-girlfriend had been using this information to time her random phone calls and social media posts perfectly. The worst part was discovering how calculated it all was. She would create problems in our marriage, then comfort me afterward while simultaneously reporting back to the ex about how upset I was. When my husband and I had that huge fight about money last Christmas, she was the one who suggested I stay at her house for a few days. I thought she was being supportive, but she was actually orchestrating the whole separation. Reading those messages felt like watching my entire marriage through a funhouse mirror. Every argument we had, every moment of doubt, every time I felt like something was off but couldn't put my finger on it, suddenly made perfect sense. She had been playing puppet master with our relationship, pulling strings I didn't even know existed. My husband had no idea what his mother was doing. He genuinely loved me and was trying his best to make our marriage work, but he was fighting battles he didn't understand. When his ex would call during our date nights, he thought it was just bad timing. When I would get upset about things that seemed random, he thought I was being overly sensitive. The messages revealed her long-term plan to break us up and get her precious son back with his high school sweetheart. She had never gotten over the fact that he chose me instead of the girl she had handpicked for him. In her mind, I was just a temporary obstacle that needed to be removed with enough patience and manipulation. I spent the rest of that day in a complete daze, trying to process what I had learned. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but another part of me was terrified of destroying the only family I had ever known. The foster care system had taught me that family was precious and rare, even when it was complicated. But as I kept reading, my hurt turned into anger. She had stolen 3 years of my marriage, 3 years of happiness, and trust that I could never get back. She had made me doubt myself, made me question my own instincts, made me feel crazy for sensing something was wrong when everything looked perfect on the surface. That evening, when my husband came home from work, I watched him differently. I could see how tired he looked, how stressed he had become from all the manufactured drama in our relationship. He was a good man caught in the middle of a war he didn't know was being fought. His mother had been poisoning both of us, just in different ways. I made a decision that night that would change everything. Her 70th birthday party was coming up in 2 weeks, and the entire extended family would be there. She loved being the center of attention, loved having everyone admire her and tell her what a wonderful mother and grandmother she was. I decided that would be the perfect time to show everyone who she really was. Preparing for the confrontation was the hardest thing I had ever done. I had to act normal around her for 2 weeks, pretending I still thought she was the loving mother-in-law who cared about my happiness. Every time she hugged me or asked about my day, I wanted to scream. But I knew I had to be strategic about this. I made copies of all the messages, organized them chronologically, and even reached out to the ex-girlfriend directly. That conversation was surreal, but it confirmed everything I had suspected. She admitted that my mother-in-law had been encouraging her to interfere in our marriage, even going so far as to suggest specific things to say that would hurt me the most. The ex-girlfriend actually seemed relieved to finally talk about it. She had been feeling guilty about her role in the whole mess, but didn't know how to stop without losing the only connection she had to my husband. She agreed to help me expose what had been happening. understanding that we had both been manipulated by someone who was supposed to care about our well-being. The night before the party, I barely slept. I kept going over my plan, wondering if I was doing the right thing. My husband was excited about celebrating his mother's birthday, and I knew I was about to destroy his image of her forever. But I also knew that our marriage couldn't survive if the truth stayed hidden. The party was being held at a local community center, decorated with photos from every stage of her life. She looked so happy greeting everyone, accepting compliments and gifts, basking in the adoration of her family and friends. I felt sick watching her performance, knowing what I knew about her true nature. I waited until after dinner, when everyone was relaxed and comfortable. She was opening gifts at the front of the room, surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The timing felt perfect, when she was at her most vulnerable and everyone was paying attention to her. I stood up and asked if I could say a few words about the birthday girl. Everyone smiled and nodded, expecting a sweet speech about what a wonderful mother-in-law she had been to me. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started reading some of her messages to the ex-girlfriend, word for word. The room went completely silent. People's faces changed from confused to shocked to horrified as they realized what they were hearing. My husband's face went through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. His mother tried to interrupt me, but I kept reading, my voice getting stronger with each damning message. When I finished, I looked directly at her and told everyone that this was the real woman they had been celebrating. I explained how she had been sabotaging my marriage for years while pretending to love and support me. The silence in that room was deafening. Then the chaos started. Family members began talking all at once, some defending her, others expressing their shock and disappointment. My husband just sat there staring at his mother like he had never seen her before. She was crying, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of shame or anger at being caught. Several people left the party immediately, disgusted by what they had heard. Others stayed to comfort her, though their support seemed half-hearted after learning the truth. The beautiful birthday celebration turned into a nightmare of accusations and damaged relationships. My husband and I left together, but we drove home in complete silence. I could tell he was processing everything, trying to reconcile the mother he thought he knew with the woman I had just exposed. When we got home, he went straight to his office and closed the door. I sat in our living room for hours, wondering if I had just destroyed my marriage while trying to save it. Maybe there had been a better way to handle the situation. Maybe I should have confronted her privately first. Maybe I should have just accepted that some families are complicated and moved on. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. My husband came downstairs and hugged me for the first time in months, really hugged me like he meant it. He apologized for not believing me when I tried to tell him something felt wrong. He said he finally understood why I had been so stressed and unhappy lately. We spent the whole day talking about everything that had happened in our marriage, re-examining every fight and misunderstanding with this new information. It was like putting together a puzzle that had been missing crucial pieces. So many things that had seemed random or inexplicable suddenly made perfect sense. The hardest part was realizing how much damage had been done to our trust and communication. We had both been living in a house of mirrors, never sure what was real and what was manipulation. Learning to trust each other again would take time, but at least now we knew what we were fighting against. His mother tried to contact us several times over the next few weeks, alternating between apologies and accusations. She claimed she was just trying to protect her son from making a mistake, that she never meant to hurt anyone. But her messages to the ex-girlfriend told a different story, one of deliberate manipulation and calculated cruelty. The extended family was divided about what had happened. Some people cut contact with her entirely, shocked by the extent of her deception. Others thought I had been too harsh, that family problems should be handled privately. A few relatives even reached out to apologize for not noticing what was happening sooner. My husband struggled with his relationship with his mother more than I expected. She had been such a central figure in his life, and discovering her true nature was devastating for him. He went through stages of grief, denial, anger, and eventually acceptance. It was painful to watch, but also necessary for our marriage to heal. The most surprising thing was how other family members started sharing their own stories about her behavior. Apparently, she had been manipulating relationships and creating drama for years, but everyone had kept quiet about it. My public confrontation gave others permission to speak up about their own experiences. One cousin told me she had always suspected something was wrong with how my mother-in-law talked about me behind my back. Another family member admitted they had noticed how she would stir up trouble between couples, then play innocent when confronted. It turned out I wasn't her first victim, just her most recent one. Learning about her pattern of behavior helped me understand that her actions weren't really about me personally. She was someone who needed to control the people around her, who felt threatened by any relationship that didn't center her. My marriage was just the latest threat to her position as the most important woman in her son's life. 6 months after the birthday party disaster, my husband and I were doing better than we had in years. We were communicating more openly, trusting each other more deeply, and actually enjoying each other's company again. The toxic influence that had been poisoning our relationship was gone, and we could finally see each other clearly. We decided to cut contact with his mother completely, at least for the foreseeable future. It was a difficult decision, but we both agreed that our marriage needed space to heal without her interference. Some family members supported our choice, while others thought we were being too extreme. The ex-girlfriend actually reached out to apologize a few months later. She admitted that she had been desperate to reconnect with my husband and had let my mother-in-law manipulate her into doing things she knew were wrong. She promised to leave us alone and wished us well in our marriage. That apology meant more to me than I expected. It helped me understand that we had all been victims of someone who was skilled at exploiting people's weaknesses and insecurities. The ex-girlfriend had been lonely and hopeful, my husband had been trusting and loyal, and I had been desperate for family acceptance. A year later, my husband and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just our closest friends. It felt like starting over, like we were choosing each other again with full knowledge of what we were fighting for. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, a celebration of surviving something that could have destroyed us. We still get updates about his mother through other family members. She has apparently moved on to interfering in other people's relationships, unable to learn from what happened at her birthday party. Some people never change, no matter how dramatic the consequences of their actions. Looking back, I'm glad I exposed her when I did, even though it was painful and messy. Living with that level of deception and manipulation was slowly killing my marriage and my mental health. Sometimes the truth needs to be dramatic to be heard, especially when it's been hidden for so long. The experience taught me that family isn't always what it appears to be on the surface. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones doing the most damage. Learning to trust my own instincts again, even when everyone else thinks I'm wrong, has been one of the most valuable lessons of my life. My marriage is stronger now than it ever was before, built on a foundation of truth instead of carefully constructed lies. We're expecting our first child next month, and I'm grateful that our baby will grow up in a home free from the toxic influence that almost destroyed us. Sometimes you have to burn down the old house to build something better. The birthday party confrontation became legendary in our family, talked about for years afterward. Some people still think I went too far, but most understand that desperate situations sometimes require desperate measures. When someone is systematically destroying your life, sometimes public exposure is the only way to stop them. I learned that evil doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes it comes wrapped in homemade cookies and Sunday dinners, wearing the face of someone who's supposed to love and protect you. The most dangerous people are often the ones who know exactly how to hide their true nature behind a mask of kindness and care.